Hello, everybody, and welcome to The Scares That Shaped Us, a podcast about horror writers and the stories that made them. I'm your host, Matthew Jackson, and today we are joined by one of the best speculative fiction writers in the game right now. They are the author of books like The Echo Wife, Just Like Home, and Spread Me. Their latest book is called Make Me Better. It is available now. Sarah Gailey, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be talking to you.
It's my pleasure. I'm excited to have you. As I said before we started recording, I'm a big fan. I've been a fan since Just Like Home, and I'm a huge fan of Make Me Better. I reviewed it at Bloody Disgusting, so anyone who's curious, but for my full thoughts on all of it, can read it over there. But before we get into questions about it, would you mind giving our listeners a little taste of what Make Me Better is?
Of course. So Make Me Better is a book about an isolated community that dedicates itself to wellness, healing, and transformation. We follow the story of a woman named Celia who is trying desperately to fix herself. She is mired in grief and loneliness, and she just knows that there's some fundamental flaw at the core of her that can be solved. And this community promises to help her do that.
Yes. And secrets and strange happenings abound. Where does this story start for you? Does it start with Celia? Does it start with the community that which is called Kindred Cove for listeners? Does it start with that sort of wellness environment, or does it start with the person seeking that environment?
To me, this story starts with it. Well, actually, I should ask when you're asking that, do you mean where did the story start inside of me, or do
Yes,
you?
yes.
Okay, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
You
that's what
as
I
a
thought.
writer, like what's the seed of the story for you?
The seed of this one is really community dynamics. In 2019 and 2020, I was watching as communities I was part of and adjacent to were kind of falling apart. There was sort of this domino effect happening in a lot of my circles, and I watched this disintegration of community and got curious about where that came from and ended up diving really deep into dynamics of control and attachment between people and the way that people will look at those around them who are in community with them and will try to put them into roles that are supportive of the self. So, like, I might have people around me who I think of as serving a particular function in my life. And when they turn out to be whole, entire, actual, complicated people with their own interiority and their own needs who don't necessarily fit into roles in my worldview, um, that can create for some people a sense of threat. And you can expand that dynamic to apply to entire communities where people have their role that they serve in the community in support of the community's function. And when they step outside that role or fail to fulfill it, it's a transgression and not just a function of people being complex. So I started really, really diving deep into this, and found myself so changed by the experience of learning about these community dynamics, interpersonal attachment systems, and the way that maybe the most dangerous interpersonal attachment system is the one that is most prevalent in high control groups, which is a unilateral attachment system where you have to be attached to me. You have to care what I think and feel very deeply. It has to matter to you a lot what state I'm in. But if you want me to feel the same thing toward you, you're transgressing in our dynamic. Um, I have to be completely free of attachment to you, and you have to be completely wholly attached to me. And learning about that really made this book. And it's so funny. Usually, my books start for me in a very granular place, like a single image, a single idea, a single thought. And this one was so much more abstract in my immediate interest in it. I had to find my way to Celia, who's in some ways our protagonist, kind of a focal character. I had to locate her over the course of multiple drafts of the book.
That's really interesting. So what did the early what did like the first draft of Make Me Better look like then if Celia wasn't really Celia yet?
Bad. It looked really bad. It was it was very focused on the community, um, and on this sort of I'm so sorry, a noun just completely fell out of my brain. this, this kind of collective tense that I was writing in. It was very about the shape of life at Kindred Cove through the eyes of people who have lived their entire lives.
Yeah.
And really, it was very focused on the dynamic between Easy and Adelaide. So, in this book, for your listeners who haven't read it yet, we are living in two storylines, and one of them is Celia's storyline. She's the woman who's coming to this place to seek healing. And the other storyline is about two sisters, Easy and Adelaide. And growing up, Adelaide was the golden child of the community, could do no wrong. Everything she did was at least well intentioned, everyone would assume. And Easy, her sister, is the sorry, are we a swearing podcast?
Oh yeah, let it fly.
Okay, great. Easy is the fuck up of the island. Easy is what in clinical circles we call the designated problem. The person who everyone is constantly frustrated with because they just can't seem to get anything right. And your listeners have probably experienced this in workplaces. There's always that one coworker who everyone agrees just sucks and they hate him. And then that coworker gets fired and everyone's relieved for like a week. And then you have to figure out who's the new designated problem. Well, Easy has been the designated problem her whole life. And in a high control environment, in an authoritarian community like this, you have some options as the designated problem. You can capitulate and be broken by the community, or you can start trying to collect power so that the community can no longer control you. And in this second storyline, Adelaide has been away for some time and returns to the island expecting to still be the golden child, only to find that in her absence, the dynamic at the island has changed. So the first draft of this book was primarily focused on that, on what happens when someone goes away and then comes back to a community with these rigid roles assigned to its members and this intense punishment of perceived transgression. Um, what what happens to you when you come back to find that your seat has been filled?
Yeah, it's I love the flashbacks. I love how much texture they give all of it. I also want to ask you about the reef, which we can't talk too much about because it becomes spoilery, but it's mentioned as Celia's arriving, so I feel like we can talk a little bit about it. That Kindred Cove has this reef jutting out from it that's biologically fascinating to everyone. Uh, where does the reef come in for you as kind of this other character in the story?
So the reef was another thing that came for me very early in this book. I was thinking about how how to make writing about community dynamics interesting because like I really can't overemphasize how dull this book would be if I got to just say, here's 400 pages of things I learned about attachment dynamics and cults. Like it's not, someone else wrote that book in an interesting way. That's not for me to do. I would fail. So I was thinking about how do I talk about these systems? Well, I need to isolate this group so that everyone is trapped with the consequences of their actions as much as possible. In life, in circles I've been in, when a community falls apart, those people don't get vaporized instantly, right? They go other places. They go to a new church. They go to a different group chat to say, you won't believe what happened with my friend group. But that, again, boring book. So I need to isolate these guys. And I recalled this ecological disaster that I learned about in a place called Lake Peigneur in Louisiana, where I'm gonna try to summarize this as as like tightly as possible so I don't bore your listeners to tears. But there was a collapse of the lake bed due to a mining incident. And this shallow freshwater lake collapsed into the salt mines underneath it, turning that lake into an extremely deep saltwater lake. The flow of the water into the salt mines was so violent that it actually reversed the outflow of the lake into a nearby bay and pulled seawater into the lake as well. So the entire ecosystem completely changed. Everything about this lake was transformed. And I thought, well, that's perfect for what I need here.
Yes.
Um, and so the people of Kindred Cove live on this island that used to be in the middle of a freshwater lake that is now a saltwater lake that's been totally transformed. And the biggest threat to that isolation that I could come up with, the biggest thing that I could think of would be a combination of the island disappearing and the island being connected to the world. So this reef is a kind of coral that doesn't necessarily, that we don't necessarily have knowledge of or access to in our world. I'm not going to say that doesn't exist because I don't know shit about the ocean. And it grows very rapidly. It's large enough in volume that it's raising the water level in this lake to slowly suck up this little island that these people live on. And it also is forming a bridge to the mainland and bringing more and more people to the lake who want to study it. And those people have an interest in what's happening on this island. So I wanted to use the reef to create that sort of threat to the existing dynamic of Kindred Cove through something totally outside their control.
It's a really interesting juxtaposition of things because it on one level it functions very much as a sort of kind of almost classic like Wicker Man style horror setup because you have this outsider arriving in this community and all of their customs and ways of doing things are alien to her, but she's trying, unlike the lead character in The Wicker Man, she's trying to be part of it. Celia wants very badly to commit to everything that these people are telling her to do because she wants to be better. Uh, she wants to let go of well, I guess she doesn't want to let go. She wants things back, but we won't get too deep into that. And then you have this community that is trying to put on this face of like, yes, we know exactly what we're doing. We have done this for years. This is Kindred Cove. We know how to work stuff. And all of these flashbacks show this community that is at a crossroads and not quite sure what the path forward is and what each person's place in it is. And I love the way those two things complement each other. But I want to talk a little bit more about Celia because I've seen you mention in social posts about this book in the lead up to the release that you felt like this book transformed you. The act of writing it was a transformative experience for you. And Celia obviously undergoes some of that. What was the emotional process for you like as you navigated those dynamics and how do you feel like this book transformed you?
Oh, that's such a wonderful question. Approaching Celia was a very interesting project for me. When I started coming up with the idea for this book, when I was researching it and sort of figuring out the shape of it, I was in a very specific season of my life. I had been through a lot of upheaval. I had landed in what I thought was a stable place with a partner who, when we got together, our agreement and understanding was that we were going to have a family together. And then something changed in that relationship that made that future go away. And I was very sad. I was like life-changingly sad at having that future disappear. And in writing this book, I decided to take the opportunity to ask the questions about that sadness that were most painful to ask myself. You know, the question, why am I sad at the idea that I will not have children? Why is that causing me such grief? What do I want out of this idea of starting a family? Um, do I maybe want this for bad reasons? Do I maybe want it because I'm bad? Is it maybe good that it's going away from me? Is this pain a good and correct thing for me to experience? In asking those questions, I found a lot of answers about myself and in myself, and found a lot of healing. Um, and also found out that I could explore scarier things inside myself than I thought I could, that I could ask myself questions that were frightening and learn about myself through the answer. And then I decided to say, okay, but what if this character didn't have that ability and needed instead to turn to the person closest to her, who just so happens to be a cult leader, for answers, which was really fun. The other thing that this book really did in my life, is it changed my relationship to grief completely. I, several years into writing it, went through another period of upheaval, one that was quite long overdue by that point. But again, I was confronted by this intense grief of my life is different than what I thought it was going to be. Um, in the time since then, I've found that to be a very good thing, but in the moment, it felt very bad. And I was sitting in this grief and facing down this rewrite of this goddamn wretched, evil book that had been ruining my life for years. And I had been looking at this book with my editor and going, what's missing? Something's missing. Something's not here. And I was sitting in this grief of this horrible season of my life. And I said, oh, this is it. It's what's missing from this book is that it's about grief. It's about what we'll do to escape grief and what we'll do to avoid it. And I have really come to believe in the time since, through writing this book and through living in this period of my life, that grief is the most brutally painful human experience. And it's the most unavoidable human experience. And it is the one that we will do the most to escape. Humans will do like just about anything to escape grief because it feels unbearable. It's awful. It changes a person. And sometimes we don't want to change. Sometimes change is the scariest thing imaginable because who knows what that grief will change us into. And I've also become quite attached to grief because in exploring so thoroughly what grief means for us and what we'll do to each other and to ourselves to escape it, I've really come to a very deep principle that to love is to commit to future grief.
Yeah.
It's either with everyone who I love, and I have many wonderful relationships in my life, every single one of them represents a future in which either I or the other person or both of us will experience a separation that is irreversible and unbridgeable. And that separation represents a huge amount of pain. And it's so necessary to be able to sit in and live in that knowledge that grief is part of love, that it is an inevitable extension of love, and that makes grief something not to be avoided, I think, but to be appreciated and ultimately to be pursued. I want to pursue those loving relationships. I want to pursue being alive in a real and integrated and connected way. And so I'm chasing grief with my whole life, with my whole heart. That's what I'm doing every single day. Um, and this book brought me to that.
I have so many questions I want to ask you about the ending of the book now, but I can't because I don't want to spoil it for people. But that was beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. Um, yeah, everybody go read Make Me Better, and you will like there are just so many emotional and thematic layers tapering out from every part of this book that are in wrapped up in what Gailey just said. So definitely go pick the book up. So instead of asking you super spoilery questions about the ending, I want to ask you, this is something like I've always wanted to have you on the show. One of the reasons is I think that you, and I've said this elsewhere in print, so people can't accuse me of blowing smoke just because you're here with us. I think that you are one of the best prose stylists in genre fiction.
Oh my gosh.
I read Just Like Home. The first time I went through it was the audio, and I don't remember the narrator's name right now,
XE
but they
Sands.
I'm sorry, say it again.
XE Sands.
XE Sense. They did a remarkable job with that narration. It's a beautiful audiobook, but I just got lost in the language. I got lost in the sentences, and um, I feel it again with Make Me Better and your short fiction and everything else of yours I've read. And you talked about the number of drafts and the amount of struggling with this book, at least in terms of narrative. How much how much goes into is that just how the words manifest for you, or is it a constant process of refining sentence by sentence to get that kind of uh that kind of flow that you have in your work?
Well, I mean, first of all, thank you for an enormous compliment. The field of genre fiction prose writers out there today is like stacked. So I please know that is not landing lightly with me. um,
Yes.
uh, sentences come for me pretty easily. Um, I love writing a good sentence. You know, Raymond Chandler um, would talk about how his job was writing good sentences. He famously did this interview, I think, for The Long Goodbye, where the person interviewing him said, "But I don't get it at the end. I don't know who was the killer." And he says, "How the fuck should I know? I'm just here to write sentences."
Well, there's
um,
that other famous Chandler story where he forgot a whole character in
yeah.
I forget which book it was, but there was a character who pops up and seems like he's going to be an important player, and then someone asked him later about what happened to that guy. Oh, I forgot about him. Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I interrupted you. Go ahead.
No, his my favorite of his is there's nothing emptier than an empty swimming pool. Like, just what a line. I love sentences. I love crafting them. You know, A.B. Guthrie said that the key to good fiction is a constant undercurrent of the unexpected.
Mm.
And that's something that I love in a sentence. I love to be writing a sentence and then like snap it in half. Um, the problem I run into is that sometimes I love writing the prose so much that it changes the narrative. I'll be writing a piece of prose and something will come to me and I'll be like, "Oh, I really love that. It feels really right. Does not fit the shape of this story." And I'll try really hard to be like disciplined and buckle down and be like uh like how Mariah Carey's hot diet tip she would share in the 2000s was that she was when she was craving chocolate, she'd eat a piece of ice and be like, "Okay, I'm getting rid of that line because it doesn't work for this story. The plot can't support it." And about half the time I end up changing the plot instead.
Wow, that's so interesting because I know so many writers, myself included, write for like they build their plots around like a cool scene. Like I thought of this cool scene and I really want this scene in here and I'm going to twist and turn everything to get this one cool moment that I thought of that I really want in this book. Like is there an example you can share of like of a past work that we can spoil now where a sentence changed the plot in any kind of dramatic way?
Oh gosh. I mean, I know it happened a bunch in Magic for Liars. Um, in Magic for Liars, there is the subplot of like the chosen one at this high school for magical teens. And it's this teen boy who is convinced that he's the subject of a prophecy. And he's just trying so hard to figure out his purpose and how it's going to manifest. And he's very anxious and stressed about it because, of course, he would be. And in writing him and in writing his counterpart in his plot, who I mean, the book's been out for a while, but I still don't want to spoil it because
Right.
not everyone's read it. There were so many moments between the two of them and just in how they would show up on the page where I would start writing a description of what they were doing or what they looked like or how they were reacting to stuff. And especially the reactions, I would start writing the reaction and the sentence would go someplace that I hadn't really planned on. And I would go, well, shit, their motivation's not what I thought it was. Like, this character is reacting in this way, therefore their motivation can't be the thing that it initially was in my mind. And that ended up changing their entire storyline.
Wow. I'm gonna have to go back and look at that now and think in those terms. But from one great genre prose stylist to another, we are here today to talk about Sarah Gailey. We're also here today to talk about Clive Barker,
Oh,
who
you want to
is
talk about great lines?
oh yeah. Of the opening of this book is the great gray beast of February. Oh my gosh.
The
So
great gray beast February had eaten Harvey Swick alive. This sentence is my favorite first line in any book anywhere, and I'm so obnoxious about it. I bring it up all the time, and I will pin people down and be like, listen to this first paragraph, and then I make them let me read it to them, and then I stare at them like, see, do you see what he did? Do you see what he can do?
So if you don't know that line, we're going to talk about The Thief of Always, Clive Barker's novel for I guess all ages, younger readers, but also all ages.
Yeah, I
Uh,
think we
the,
would call it a middle grade now.
yeah,
I don't think that
probably.
category was quite around at the time.
Uh, Published in 1992. Uh, this is a book that I have heard so many horror fans and fantasy fans say it was like, oh, this was my gateway book. This was the thing that I picked it up when I was a kid and I couldn't put it down, and it's amazing. So I'm very happy that someone finally brought it to the podcast. But Gailey, what do you remember about the first time you experienced The Thief of Always?
Oh, I mean it's incredible. It's a stunning book, and I remember being stunned by it at the time, um, because of how uncondescending it was. This
Yeah.
was the book that took me, and absolutely no disrespect intended to Goosebumps here. It's just developmentally took me out of my Goosebumps era and into a more grown-up experience of horror. Goosebumps, I have deep, profound respect for because writing horror for children is so hard. And R.L. Stine, obviously, the goat, like, has this way of creating a safe experience of fear for kids, which is wonderful. But I was reaching this point in devouring Goosebumps where I was like frustrated because nothing bad was happening. Like someone opens the refrigerator and screams, end chapter, fantastic cliffhanger, architect. Start of the next chapter, the food in here is so stinky. And that's important to that safe experience of fear for kids. It's like you get to feel scared, but you're still okay. And we can like develop resilience in that fear. This is like developmentally important and good. But as a kid reading that, I was starting to go, okay, but like, I'm, but I'm scared and nothing's happening. Like, and I was feeling kind of stuck. And I picked up The Thief of Always, and the bad things are happening immediately. Like line
Immediately.
one, this is talking about a kid getting eaten alive, and then we dive into his boredom, which is such a profound understanding of the kid experience. Like he's 10 years old and he's bored and there's nothing exciting happening in his life and he's miserable, and the adults in his life don't get it. They're like, life is short, it moves fast, lots happens. And he's like, okay, but I'm 10 and nothing is happening. And every minute is an hour and every hour is a year. And that misery I had never seen truly explored, like the interiority of a wretchedly bored kid I'd never seen on the page before. And I just remember going, I don't know if I should, if I'm supposed to be allowed to read this book. Like,
Mm.
this doesn't seem like the kind of book grown-ups like to let kids my age have. So of course I wanted it more than anything and like devoured it and was so petrified and so in love immediately.
It's a it still can sweep you off your feet. Like I'm 39 now, and I just reread it, and it's gorgeous stuff. But for those who don't know, and we will spoil The Thief of Always, everybody, because it's been a while. Your library has it, I'm sure. Go get it and pause the podcast, read the book. It won't take you long. Come back. It's it's one of those stories similar to something like the Damnation Game, I think, where Barker is starting with something that feels quite familiar to genre fans, which is about a 10-year-old kid named Harvey who is extremely bored and his parents don't understand. And he is just in the absolute doldrums of life as a 10-year-old boy. And then this magical guy shows up and says, hey, you want to come have fun at this place I know where there's just nonstop fun? And Harvey goes, yeah. And so they go off to Holiday House, which is this. Uh, it's just a beautiful house with beautiful grounds, and there's a pond, and uh, but it seems to be hidden from view outside of the city where Harvey lives, and it's just this sort of oasis where every season passes every day. So you get uh how does it work? You get spring in the morning or fall, yeah, spring in the morning, summer in the afternoon, fall in the evening, winter at night, and you get Thanksgiving dinner every day, Halloween every day, Christmas every day. It's every kid's dream. And of course, something nefarious is happening underneath it. But the cool thing is, because it's Clive Barker, the nefarious stuff never quite progresses in the way you think it's going to progress. It does not follow the formulaic like Pinocchio thing of we're going off to this magical place. It does so many other interesting things narratively. Um, so we talked a little bit about your first experience of it. Like, other than the interiority, I want to ask you about the narrative. Like, what about this? What sticks out to you about the way Barker handles this story, which up to this point in his career, he wrote other stuff for younger readers after this, but this was the first time anyone. This was in 1992, so this was Mr. Hellraiser, Clive Barker, going, "I've got a kids book," and everyone was like, "You do? Okay." So
God,
what sticks
incredible.
out to you about the narrative here?
I mean, I will say, like, to your last point there, I love telling people about this book because I get to be like, yeah, it's Thief of Always. It's this great horror book for younger readers by Clive Barker. And they always think they misheard me. They're
Mm-hmm.
always like, did you say Clive Barker? And I'm like, yeah, and it rips. The thing that stands out to me so much about this narrative, you alluded to a minute ago when you said it's not doing the Pinocchio thing. It's not a morality story.
Yeah.
at all. It's not a situation where these kids are being greedy and selfish and terrible and thus getting punished. This kid is bored. He's going, I'm bored. This sucks. But he's not, causing a riot about it. Guy shows up and says, you want to not be bored? And Harvey Swick considers thoughtfully the way 10-year-old kids do how this would affect the people in his life. He's like, how long will I be gone? Is it far away from here? Can I get there and then be back in time for like class and dinner and stuff? Okay, I'll go for just a couple hours. Sure. And then calls his parents from the house. The house tricks him by making him think that his parents knew he was here. He calls his parents and they say, oh, yeah, we just thought that you needed something nice to happen to you. Have fun. Don't worry. We know you're in good hands. Everything's okay. Right. He's a smart, thoughtful kid. And I found that really striking because it's Clive Barker never condescends to his readers. And, part of what's so difficult about writing for a young audience is they're very sensitive to condescension. And you have to give them developmentally appropriate material, right? You have to give kids material that is for kids because they're not grown-ups. They are concerned with different things. Striking that balance is so hard. That was, I think, the frustration I was having with Goosebumps, is that it was no longer developmentally where I was at.
Yeah.
And this was. Clive Barker never condescends to young readers. He goes, I know that you think about stuff. I know that the things you're frightened of are legitimate and that you are thoughtful. And he says all that just in the way these children approach this offer of the holiday house. The other thing that really flattens me in this book is that the experience of holiday house is not about relentless luxury. There's endless good food and like fun costumes to play with and comic books to read and stuff, but the primary activities the kids engage in here is imagination play.
Yeah.
It's not you get to have all your sumptuous desires fulfilled, which is really a grown-up fantasy. My grown-up fantasy is having the perfect couch that fits perfectly in my living room and it's comfortable and you can sleep on it. And it's I can see this couch in my heart, in my little covetous sinner's heart. But little kids want to play. And this house gives them everything they need and supports them perfectly in getting to play and exercise imagination and build what they want to build. There's this whole treehouse project that's like a treehouse Harvey and this other kid Wendell are constantly building and repairing. And they don't get given a perfect completed treehouse because the joy is in them finding the right scrap of wood and climbing up the ladder and figuring stuff out. And there's something so beautiful and so Barker level tragic and sad that it's that's the trap you lay for children, is telling them that they will have ample opportunity to imagine and create.
Yeah, it's rare that you come across an author, especially an author who is not known for writing for kids, who understands the importance for kids of just fucking around.
Yes.
That is so important in so many memories of my own childhood, because I grew up in the country in Texas. So our whole day was just go outside and fuck around. Just
yes.
Find some rocks, make a thing with the rocks, dig a hole, get dirty.
Oh, dig a hole, primo.
Yeah, dig a hole is perfect kid stuff. Just why are you digging a hole? I don't know. I want to see how far I can get it.
Yeah. And
see what's down there.
Guess what I found? Stuff under the ground.
Stuff.
Oh, awesome. I grew up in a house that abutted a creek. So there was the back fence and then a creek behind it. And critters would come into our backyard. And I would go out once or twice a day and do my rounds in the yard because there was a big piece of plywood that was just on the ground. There was a big cinder block. There was like a cover for a drainage thing, and I would go walk in a circle around the yard, lifting stuff up and being like, "What's under here today? A new kind of worm, a snake, a bug
That
I hadn't
was
seen before."
Yeah, with us it was hay bales. We would go look under hay bales and
Oh,
what's crawling
under
around
hay
under the hay
bales.
bales. It was so
Whoa.
good. Just grubs the size of your thumb. It was amazing. Um, so yeah, that's an amazing element of this story. And then another thing I love about it, and you said he does not condescend, and I think that's very true. I also think that there's a fun thing happening here where it is the first unnatural thing that happens to Harvey is uh, a guy named Rictus showing up. And his name is Rictus, and he is this well dressed, weird looking dude with the widest grin imaginable on his face. And as an adult, you hear the word rictus, which already is kind of, rictus grin. So you think about like the Joker. And then but Harvey is just interacting with this guy of like, yeah, he's smiling at me. He's a nice man smiling at me, and he's offering to take me on this cool adventure. And so as an adult reading it, you're going, oh yeah, something's not right here. And of course, Harvey is just like, what do you mean? This is my friend. And all of those little seeds are planted along the way, where depending on you were talking about developmental material here, like depending on where you're at in your life, you will find more or less of this book scary based on your experience. But when the horror finally kicks in for Harvey, like when Harvey starts to be afraid of things, because we have had all of that groundwork laid, and because we know that so much of what Holiday House does is just allow you to be a kid, it hits so much harder. The horror elements when Harvey gets pulled under the water by the big fish, which the big fish have their own. There's a reason that the big fish are pulling him under, and it's not just because they're hungry. Uh, that's terrifying. But the more terrifying thing, you mentioned Wendell. So there are three kids at the house when Harvey gets there. Well, there are two kids, and he's the third. There's Harvey, there's Wendell, and there's a girl named Lulu. Uh, Wendell is the one who cracks first. Wendell is the one who realizes that something is wrong, and Harvey finds him outside one day, and he's losing his shit because Wendell's like, I have to leave. I have to get out of here. I want to go home right now. Something is wrong. We're going to die. That I can't imagine. I did not read this book as a child. I did not read it until probably late teens, early 20s. Reading this book as a kid and having that kid just freaking out, going like, I'm going to die in here. I know it. I have to get out, is one of the scariest. It's devastating. It's devastating. It's so
But
good.
I think there's something really interesting that Barker does there narratively because the thing that cracks Wendell is a Halloween prank.
Yes.
It's Halloween every single night at like dusk. And so at Holiday House, there's an endless collection of masks and clothes, which very deft. Like the clothes are just things that belong to other kids who were here before. And it's like, oh, where'd they go? But as a young reader, you're like, yeah, sure, okay, they're just a dress up pile, whatever. And the first night, Wendell plays a prank on Harvey that scares him, it spooks and scares him. And so the next evening, Harvey's like, I'm gonna get him back for that prank. Maybe it's not the next evening, maybe it's like a few nights later. But he goes, I'm gonna get him back. And this denizen of the house physically transforms him by sculpting his body to change him into a vampire. And he swoops down on Wendell and scares the piss out of Wendell. And Wendell starts trying to throw Harvey under the bus to this creature that he doesn't recognize,
Oh,
saying,
that's right.
take
Yes.
Harvey instead, take Harvey instead. And one of the denizens of the house is encouraging Harvey to kill Wendell, is like, do it, kill him, suck his blood. You know, you want to go get him. And Harvey is tempted and then goes, wait, no, this isn't me. I don't want this. And so when he sees Wendell the next day freaking out, and Wendell's like, you don't understand, something bad happened to me last night here. Harvey knows that he is the bad thing that happened to his friend. And as a result, he doesn't question Wendell's fear at all. He's not like, oh, come on, I'm sure it's fine. You're being silly. He's like, yeah, something bad did happen to you. And internally, like, he knows that he is the bad thing that happened and that the house made him into that. It's such a, it's again, such a fucking Clive Barker move to go, yeah, the real horrors happen between people.
Yeah.
This is like part of, well, it's one of the fundamentals of the Hellraiser universe is that the Cenobites are not the villains. The Cenobites are doing a job.
Yeah.
That's their job that you frankly asked them to come do. The villains who are hurting each other are the people involved in those stories. And it's something that I'm amazed Barker was able to pull off in a book for young readers.
I love, and it plays with that classic Barker thing of um because it's not like it would be very easy to just jump immediately to these kids are going to band together and fight these monsters, which does sort of happen eventually, but not in the way that you would expect. And I love that moment. I'm so glad you brought that moment up, the moment when Harvey is basically asked, like, do you just want to be a monster? You can be. Like, we're fine with it. Which I love. That's where you get the other people in the house, which again, they're like, if you think of them as adults, you're terrified. If you think of them as a kid, you're like, oh, neat. Because there's Rictus, who is the guy who smiles. There's Jive, who uh, is called Jive because every part of his body seems to move independently of itself at once, which you say that out loud and you go, oh, God. Like, to the point that Barker describes every hair on his head seems to move independently of the other ones. And then Mar is the sort of sorcerer person who sculpts Harvey into this winged, bat-eared creature. And yeah, they give him the choice. They're just like, Harvey, you can just be a monster. If you want to be a vampire, you can be a vampire. You drink his blood, be a monster. It's great. And Harvey pulls back, and it's that classic Barker thing of, we don't just fight the monsters in Clive Barker books because they resemble us and we resemble them, and we have to find uh the parts of us that are monstrous and the parts of us that are more human. We've talked about Clive Barker a lot on this show. I don't know if you can tell. But it's remarkable. And then you get into Wendell. Doesn't Wendell just vanish like the next day? He's gone. I can't remember.
Wendell ends up escaping with Harvey. They get helped out by the cook, the extremely old woman,
Oh, right,
and she
yes.
has a cat called Blue Cat, who she sends to help them escape. But they're being attacked by the fourth denizen of the house, Karna, at the time,
Karna.
and they manage to escape through this like wall of mist, this like misdirecting wall of mist that surrounds the house. And they get out and part ways to go back to their families, which is when they find that every day that passed for them at Holiday House was a year out in the world,
Yeah.
and that now their parents are old. And Wendell comes and finds Harvey and is like, we have to go back. We have to fix this. And they go back. And as soon as they get back into proximity of the house, and this is so devastatingly sad, Wendell forgets why he ever wanted to leave.
Mhm.
He forgets his fear. He forgets the threat represented by the house and is just immediately back in that contentment of, I just get to be a kid who has a nice time. And we watch on the page as his conviction falls away from him, and we see it through Harvey's eyes as Harvey realizes that he's in this fight alone now because his friend has been sucked back in.
Yes. So what I was thinking of was, it's Lulu is the one who goes missing. And
Yes, yeah.
that is part of why Harvey wants to go back, is he feels bad that he and Wendell got out, but Lulu just disappeared and they don't know where she is. So he wants to go back and try to save Lulu as well as Mrs. Griffin, which we've alluded to her a little bit. But Mrs. Griffin is the housekeeper at Holiday House, and eventually she understands that Harvey seems to realize that everything is not above board here, and confesses to him that she was a child who was brought to Holiday House some impossibly long time ago, because the kids don't really age, but apparently if you stay there long enough you do age, and she is a very old woman, which means that she has been there too long to remember. And she tells Harvey, like, he says, I'll get you out. And she says, I don't want to get out. I want to die.
Yes, yeah. She was the first kid to come to Holiday House ever, and the Mr. Howell, who owns the house and is the
Mr.
house, and
Mr. Hood.
Mr. Hood, that's right, Mr. Hood. Mr. Hood says to her, if you stay here, you can stay here forever and you'll never die and you'll never weep again. And that's her curse, is that she grows old quite quickly at the house, but then she's old forever but can't die, and she can't cry anymore. And that again is such a subtly devastating thing. And I remember being a kid and reading that and going, you can't cry? That's awful. And then going, wait a minute, grown-ups tell me all the time not to cry. This book recognizes that actually it's important to be able to have this like full emotional experience. And it had never been presented to me before by an adult, that you maybe should cry sometimes. And I don't
Yeah.
know, I was just flattened by it.
Well, and
And I am now.
she also has that beautiful moment where has to explain to Harvey that, like, death is supposed to be part of life, because he's telling her, like, I'll save you, you'll get to come back out into the regular world with us, and she says, no, you don't understand, I have lived longer than anyone is ever supposed to live, and all I want, I think she says, like, I think the way she phrases it is, I want to slip out of my skin and go to the stars, because she can't bear the idea of having to exist in her present form any longer. And the idea of putting that in a kid's book, that this in I think a relatively safe way, because she is this kind woman and she is telling him very simple terms, like, no, it's okay. It's okay that I'm going to pass. It's good that I pass. People are supposed to pass. Is just devastating in ways that I'm still grappling with in my head even as we're talking about this. And that all colors what happens next, which is essentially Harvey going back and forth with all of the monsters and defeating them, uh, because it gives the stakes so much emotional weight, because it's not just a kid being like there are so many stories about a monster kidnaps kids because the monster wants the life force of kids. Like, that's Stephen King's It, right? Like, that's we it's hungry for your life force. That's why it wants kids. Okay, that's the story. Now we fight the monster, but we're not just fighting the monster. We're fighting all of these things that we, like you just talked about, crying, like it feels like he's fighting all of these things that kids are told they're not supposed to think about, or they're supposed to repress, or they're supposed to put off until they get older, uh, and that makes it that much more remarkable when he has to, like, go fight Mr. Hood, and he has to fight Mr. Hood twice, because Mr. Hood, it turns out, is the house, and so the house talks to him. But by the end of the book, Mr. Hood also becomes this, which, oh god, a film adaptation of this, where Mr. Hood is a human shaped monster made of splinters of wood and nuts and bolts and nails from the house and is attacking him. Oh, that's beautiful. And it's also revealed then what happened to Lulu, which is that the kids who are sort of used up become the fish in the lake, which is its own kind of beautiful Clive Barker nightmare. Um, what do you? We're getting closer to the end of our time now, so I want to like pivot this back into your own work creatively. I it was really interesting rereading The Thief of Always after having just read Make Me Better, because they're both about people visiting islands of a sort and being told like, yeah, we'll make you better here. This is we'll fix everything. Don't worry about it. We got it. Were you thinking about Thief of Always in relationship to Make Me Better at all? Do you think about it in relationship to your other works, or is it just sort of a constant uh, good memory in your head of what an effective story is?
I think I am having a really hard time articulating the honest answer to this because it's kind of like, how everyone's house smells different inside?
Mm-hmm.
And it's pretty rare to really know what your own house smells like unless you've left for a while and then come back. Um, like I don't think day to day about the smell of my home that I'm in. And I work at home, so I'm here all the time. I don't think about the Thief of Always while I'm writing, but that's not because it's not present in in like the house of my skull. Um, I don't consciously refer to it, but when I look at my work, I can see so much reference to this book. In Just Like Home,
Mm-hmm.
there's a very clear reference to the end of The Thief of Always that did not occur to me to make that connection until I was rereading this book for this podcast. And then I went, oh shit, that's in there. Um, the appeal of the freedom to be just who you are is in all my work. Boredom and loneliness come up as motivating factors in my work quite often. There's a very tender brutality in all Clive Barker's work, especially in his work for young readers, that I can it's like given me an accent as a writer, kind of. In this book, very early on, Harvey witnesses the death of a cat, and the death is because the cat was curious about something and was looking at it, and that something turned out to be something that cat shouldn't have been on, and the cat dies. And it's a brutal death, and it's very sad. And then the kid gets told, like, don't worry about it, just go about your day. And there's this really tender grief in there for the way that kids get treated around death. And that's all over my work, is kids getting treated as if uh they can't come into contact with real grief and loss, even though of course they do all the time. Kids come into very close intimate contact with grief and loss, and they experience it very emotionally. But there's this understanding in The Thief of Always of the way kids are dismissed from those situations in ways that steal something from them. um I never am consciously going, ooh, The Thief of Always is going to make its way into my work, but there is no way for me to keep that that smell from perfuming everything I write.
That's an amazing metaphor, amazing way to look at it. Yeah, I also was thinking of Vera and Just Like Home, particularly the flashbacks of Vera with her dad and the way that her youth sort of colors those experiences and her love for her father colors those experiences. Yeah, I feel a lot of Harvey in there. But we started this discussion by talking about that first line in that first paragraph. And I remember when I was 16 or so picking up the Books of Blood and starting to read it and feeling like I had just been given the keys to something revolutionary, not just in terms of the way that like we there are reams and reams and reams of writing about Barker's approach to the genre and how he changed the landscape at the time, but I in terms of the prose, like just reading on a sentence by sentence level and going like I've never thought to phrase it like that. I've never thought to think of these things in this way or to make or to draw those allegorical lines the way he's doing that, and it was a whole new world of fiction for me. And I feel the same way about a lot of what you write. How important is Barker to your style, do you think?
Oh, I can't imagine myself as a writer in, you know, that movie where like the Beatles never existed or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, if Clive Barker had never existed, I have no idea what my writing would look like, but I know it would be completely different. Um, he does things with language that like insert a needle directly between the folds of my brain and leave it there forever. He in one of his Hellraiser comics that he wrote for Boom Studios back, 8 bazillion years ago. Um, Pinhead is talking to a man and he's talking about his enemies. And he says, the enemy of which I speak is men with their dirty, narrow hearts who will do anything to see one of their own suffer. I have a clinical memory disorder. It is actively difficult for me to remember a lot of things. Um, like nouns just leave me. I can't remember dates and times. I have a million systems in place to make it so that I don't completely lose track of my life. And that line of dialogue is inscribed on the inside of my skull, right in front of my frontal lobe. The first line of The Thief of Always is right next to it. Like, I cannot shake it. And my goal when I'm writing prose is always to be reaching for that feeling. Like I'm always trying to feel the like twang of that needle in the folds of my brain when I'm writing. And you know, it's good to always have something to reach for. I'm sure I'll spend the rest of my career trying to figure out how Barker does the shit he does.
One of the wildest things that I just kind of thought of this while you were talking about Clive Barker's style. Well, first of all, the one that always lives in my head is much simpler, but it's the first line of the first story in the Books of Blood, which is "The dead have highways," which I still just lives forever. But if listeners, if you like, here's a fun exercise, right? Look at a picture of Pinhead and then write down in your best narrative prose what Pinhead looks like. Then go read in The Hellbound Heart how Clive Barker describes what Pinhead looks like. I don't know how he does that so elegantly and economically and still creates the most vivid image of if you've never seen a picture of Pinhead and you read The Hellbound Heart, you're like, "Oh yeah, no, I get it. Guy with nails in his head." Okay. It's beautiful. It's amazing. I don't know how, and I mean I do know how, which is he writes draft after draft after draft and revises and takes great care with his prose, but it's still always like a magic trick.
Well, the thing that makes it a magic trick, I think, is what you just said. It's the economy.
Yes.
He's not out here spending. Like, like Clive Barker does not write a superfluous word in his sentences, but they're still so lyrical. It's like, it's like, God, there's this restaurant in Berkeley that became famous for the head chef Alice Waters' commitment to like local produce and highlighting the simplicity of ingredients. And that's not how I cook. And only occasionally how I prefer to eat. But one of her most famous dishes really stays with me is it's a dessert and it's a perfectly ripe peach. And it's just a fucking perfectly ripe peach. And there's not a whole lot of dressing up happening there, but it's perfect. And the thing that Clive Barker does is he like goes into the orchard of language and somehow has perfect peach vision and just selects the exact right one, puts it on a plate, brings it to you, and you're like, oh well, this is the best thing I've ever eaten. And he just yeah, it's the economy. It's the economy and the taste level. It's like the exact correct thing for what that sentence needs, not dancing around trying to approximate the exact correct thing with a lot of slightly incorrect things.
That's a great way. Clive Barker is the perfect peach author. That's a great way to put it. Before we go, I know I've kept you longer than I said I would. I'm sorry about that. But before we go, I want to ask you one last question, which is if we were talking about Clive Barker and you hadn't picked The Thief of Always, what would you have picked?
That's such a hurtful question.
No, no, no.
Oh my
What's your
God, what would I have picked? No, it's just the field is so okay, but you know what? Actually, I do know my answer. Um, I would pick his other book for young readers that really shaped me that I read as a teen, Abarat.
Oh, all right, yeah.
It's the story of a young woman who lives in a chicken slaughtering town. That is the industry, and it's in the middle of fucking nowhere, totally landlocked. And she cuts class because she can't stand it here anymore and walks out into a field. And in the middle of the field is an abandoned lighthouse. And she looks down under her feet, and there are shells under her feet. And she's like, what's going on here? And she ends up getting taken to this archipelago of islands where every island is a different hour of the day. And the sort of villain always seems like the wrong word to use for a Barker story, but the villain shaped guy is this man whose mother put him into a contraption that is filled with his nightmares, and the nightmares swim around him like leeches and intermittently go into and out of his head. And it's just, again, this like total lack of condescension. It's also that book is filled with his art. Clive Barker is an
Yes.
incredible visual artist, a prolific painter and
Yeah, we
sketch
didn't
artist.
even we didn't even get around to talking about the illustrations in Thief of Always, which are
Yeah,
beautiful.
they're gorgeous and scary as fuck. Like
Yes.
so frightening in a way that again does not condescend. It's giving the original scary stories to tell in the dark
Yeah.
illustrations, which are petrifying. That lack of condescension, that feeling that kids deserve to feel afraid when they want to approach that emotion, that they shouldn't be insulated from it. So formative to me and so vital and so actually kind and caring to the value of horror and to what kids are capable of. I would have picked that one.
All right. Well, next when the next book comes out, you can come back and we'll talk about Abarat because
Perfect.
I'm due for a reread of Abarat. Gailey, before we let you go, will you let everyone know where they can find you online?
Yes. So the best place to go to find me online is my website, www.sarahgailey.com, which is where you'll find links to all my other bullshit. That's where you will find where I am on Blue Sky, Instagram, very occasionally Tumblr, under various handles, but always under my name, Sarah Gailey. You can also find a link to my newsletter, Stone Soup, which is a bit more intermittent this year, but where I have run and published many essay series. And my most recent publication, Love Letters, Reasons to Be Alive, which features essays and art from incredible creatives about the things that have kept them going through impossible times. And then you can find my work everywhere you buy books and comics. I am currently publishing a comic book series called Neighborhood Watch that you can get at your local comic shop. You can buy Make Me Better, my most recent novel, everywhere you buy books, but especially at your local independent bookstore, at bookshop.org, which supports independent bookstores, or at your local library.
Our guest has been Sarah Gailey. Thank you so much for being on the show. It was great talking to you.
Thank you, Matthew. This was a pleasure.
Thanks once again to Sarah Gailey for being on the show. It was a pleasure talking with them and what I think is one of the best conversations we've ever had on this podcast. It was a fantastic time. Gailey also pointed out right after we hung up the call that if you look closely at Clive Barker's illustrations, you will see Pinhead on the wall of masks there in Holiday House. So we were talking about Pinhead, and Pinhead was there in the background the whole time, which is very Clive Barker. Anyway, yes, go be sure to pick up Make Me Better. It's available now everywhere books are sold. And go follow Gailey on their socials and keep track of everything that they have going on. If you want to keep track of everything that we have going on here at the Scares That Shaped Us HQ, the easiest way to do that is to follow us on Blue Sky. We are at scareshapedus.bsky.social over there. That is where you will find every episode of the show, new guest announcements, occasional giveaways, whatever else is on my mind that I feel like sharing with y'all. It's a fun time. We appreciate your support. You can also find us on Facebook under The Scares That Shaped Us. You can also find us on YouTube as The Scares That Shaped Us. If that is how you prefer to listen to your podcast, you can get every episode in your YouTube feed. Like, subscribe. We appreciate you. If you like the show, please let your friends know about this cool thing we're doing. And if you have the energy and the motivation, head over to the podcasting app of your choice and leave us a 5-star review. That helps us tremendously to get featured, which helps us to grow our audience, which would be awesome because then we can do more cool stuff. That is it for me this week. I will be back next week with another brand new episode. Not quite ready to announce a guest for you, but if you follow us on Blue Sky, you'll know as soon as I let everyone else know. But we will be back with another all-new episode on Wednesday, June 3rd. Until then, take care of yourselves, take care of each other. I'm Matthew Jackson, and this is The Scares That Shaped Us.